All right. If you're anything like me, you have been racing the clock for most of your life, and you might always feel like you have something to do right now. Like there's no time to wait because you'll always be late if you don't move. And if you're anything like me again, you also have a lot of regrets or past disappointments that resulted from you rushing and hurrying instead of taking your time or trusting God's timing. Well, in order to trust God's timing, we need to understand a few things about God and why He does things the way that He does them. So, if you're ready to learn how to trust God and wait without that hurried panic within you, then you're in the right place because we are talking about three things you need to understand about God's timing that will help you to have peace. Are you ready? Let's boogie. Welcome to the Panic Meet Peace podcast. I'm your host, Ashanti, and I am so grateful you're here. I have been a minister for 17 years, and even as a Christian woman and minister, I struggled with chronic anxiety. After years of silently suffering and endless panic attacks, I partnered with God so I could get back to living life joyfully, and I created this podcast with Him to give you the tools you need to live freely again. That's why it's my personal guarantee that each episode is God-centered, faith-filled, and Bible-based so you can get all you need to power through it. From thoughtful conversations with special guests to heart-to-heart chats with me over a cold glass of sweet tea, I promise you will hear something that's going to give you the strength to say yes to life again. Now, join me for today's conversation, and let's get you back on track. Without further ado, panic, meet peace. Okay, guys, I have a small confession. So I already recorded this episode, but my microphone was muted. Ashanti strikes again. This would be the second time that I have done this. And even though I checked my microphone, I still somehow managed to do this where I did not actually record it. So we're going to start over. But it's okay because the second time is the charm. And I had a practice round. So now I'm going to get this perfectly right for you guys. All right. So today we are learning about God. But while we're learning about God, we're also going to be learning about ourselves. And I hope that you learn a little bit about yourself and your spiritual adversary, because these three things are what are affecting you and causing you to feel like you're in such a hurry all the time. But we're going to slow you down. We're going to bring you back to ground level and help you to get some peace of mind. So turn on your listening ears. Let's get some clarity and dive in. The first thing that you need to understand about God to understand His timing is Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 1. One of my favorite books in the Bible. But this verse in particular says, "To everything there is a season, a time for every purpose under heaven." I want you to imagine for a minute that God has drawn a timeline on a marker board with your name on it. And He's put little dots along the timeline that reflect different experiences, growth levels, things that are going to come to you, things that you need to learn, all of that. They just reflect your entire life and they're on this timeline. And I want to imagine that you are a little dot on that timeline that's going and that you're following the timeline. And the reason why I want you to imagine that is because that is exactly what has happened. God has promised that He has given a time and a season to everything under heaven. And yes, my friend, you are under heaven, so you are included in that. God has orchestrated every moment on this timeline that is your life. But He leaves it up to you on whether or not you want to follow that plan. And we'll go into that more a little bit in a minute. But I want you to understand that He has already prepared all of it, and He has already scheduled all of it to come at the right time. So if you're feeling hurried, let me show you what is happening. The enemy, your spiritual adversary, Satan, Lucifer, the devil, he has this goal of getting you off that timeline. He doesn't know what's on it because he's the enemy. He doesn't know God's plans for your life, but he does know that God has a plan for your life. So what he does is he sets up these little distractions along your way because you're just bebopping along on that timeline. And then all of a sudden you see that somebody has accomplished something that you thought you should have already accomplished at this age. Or you start to have this desire to have something that seems like it's completely out of reach for you. Or you start to just see all of these what I call limited time only gimmicks that the enemy has placed out in front of us that lean on our desires, they pull on our lusts, and they pull on our temptations to pressure us to move us before God's time. And this can come in the shape and form of many different things. But what its ultimate goal to delay God's blessings in your life, to distract you or cause you to do something that you'll regret. And it's not a shameful thing. Everyone endures this. Everyone goes through this time of their life where they think that they're making the right move. And then they realize they were in a hurry and panicked and rushed the whole time. And it wasn't right. There's nothing to be afraid of. God is never in a hurry. There may be times where he nudges you and he says, "Hey, Ashanti, it's time for you to move, get going." But it's never a force and it's never a rush. Because one thing that God has also instilled in that timeline is something that we all know and love, and that is grace. He has given us the grace to get to these moments in our life at the appointed time. Everything that God does has a season. And so if you're feeling rushed and hurried, I want you to remind yourself of this thing that I found this quote a long time ago. I don't remember who made it, but I've used it ever since to help me to slow down. And it says, if it is to be, it will be. If not, then better. Because there are so many things that the enemy uses that are clever and enticing, and they look like they could be from God. But the truth is that if it was meant for you to have, then it would come to you at the right time. You wouldn't feel pressured, you wouldn't feel hurried, and you definitely wouldn't feel worried about it. God does not give us the spirit of fear, and he didn't give us worry. He gave us peace. He gave us love, power, and a sound mind. So when you start to feel that excited rush or that hurry to do something, remind yourself, if it is to be, it will be. If not, then better. Second thing I want you to understand about God so that you can understand his timing is that what is yours is yours. If it's for you, it's for you. But there's a catch. If you choose it. What is for you if you choose that plan. Because God is a gentleman and he is not going to impose his will on you over your own. He will suggest it. He will make signs. He will give you a way out of temptation. He will do all the things that he promised he would do in his word regarding his plan, but he leaves the choice up to us. He lets us decide if we're going to follow him, if we're going to trust his plan. But if you want those blessings, then you're going to have to choose them. So there's something that your enemy does here, and that is he offers you other choices that are available much faster. Because the enemy is so good about making other things available quickly to us. And we think, oh, okay, that's what I'm going to do because I don't want to wait for that. Or that's what I'm going to do because it's right here and it must be for me. And it is intended for you because the enemy decided that he wanted to knock you off your timeline. But is it what God intended for you? This is where people pleasing can really affect us because we can often feel pressured to do for others more than we do for God. And if we feel that pressure to do something for other people and we do what makes them happy, a lot of times we can fall off of our bandwagon and we end up with some regrets or disappointments that we could have avoided if we just said no in the first place. I don't mean people pleasing in the sense that you just do whatever people tell you. But if it's hard for you to say no, or if it's hard for you to say not yet because you really want to see that person happy, a lot of times it's not necessarily about being bullied. It's just about you love them so much. You want to see them happy. You want to see them succeed. You need to consider first, before you say yes, where you are, what your schedule is like, and where your timing is. I can't tell you guys how many times I have missed out on a blessing, on an award, on meeting someone that I wanted to see, on doing something that I wanted to do because I put somebody else's schedule before mine, or because I was afraid to make a move because I didn't want to disappoint someone else. I'm done with that, and I want you to be done with that. What God has for you is for you, and I'm encouraging you to choose that thing. Let people be disappointed. That's a truth that I believe we all need to hear. Let people be disappointed because you're not here to please people. You're here to please God. And if you want to avoid that stomach ache of regret and disappointment, then my friend, trust God's timing and wait for his plan to prosper you. Jeremiah 29, verse 11, for I know the plans that I have for you, thus saith the Lord. There are plans to prosper you, not to harm you, but to give you hope and an expected end. And that brings me into my final tip for you. Tip number 3 about God to understand his timing is that the wait is essential for the worth. Psalms 27, verse 14 says, wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord, with an exclamation point after it. So he's very adamant about you waiting on God. And I know that you've heard this saying, we've all heard it, the wait is worth it. And that is true. And I want to add to it. The wait is where the worth is created in the first place. And I'm going to use the example of baking a cake for you. So let's say that you're baking a cake. You get all the ingredients together. You put it in a bowl. You got your batter. You pour it in a pan. You put it in the oven. You turn the oven on. 45 minutes, cake time, right? If you take that batter out of the oven before the timer is up, you will miss out on the most delicate, delectable, and edible cake that you were waiting for. And it's because the process of that thing becoming what it needs to be is happening while you're waiting. So if God is saying yes to you, but you have to wait, then I want you to remind yourself that this is so worth it because the worth actually comes from the waiting period. If you pull that cake out before it's baked, it will not be worth eating. But if you allow the time to pass that needs to pass so that it can become the cake, then you will enjoy it. This is where the enemy uses his sweet tooth tactic. I'm giving these names because it's how I identify what's happening. But he uses a sweet tooth tactic. And what that is that he wants you to snack on little sweets while you're waiting for that cake to bake. So he brings candies and cakes. And my kids are such a good example of this because they'll help me put the batter together and put it in the oven. But as soon as it goes in the oven, they ask if they can have a piece of candy, or they ask if they can have some cake or some cereal or something that has some sweetness to it. And I always have to remind them, no, you want to wait for the cake so that you can enjoy that. That's what you put in all this work for. That's what you put in all this effort for, is the cake. So wait for it. If you fill up on junk, you won't be able to enjoy the cake when it comes out. And if you try, you'll give yourself a stomach ache. So this is something that the enemy uses on us as well. And let's just use the example of starting a business. If you ask God to help you start a business, then God gives you all the ingredients. He helps you put it together. He helps you make the batter, and then you put it in the oven. And while you're waiting for that business to grow, you are going to be tempted along the way to stop and do some kind of pyramid scheme, to quit and jump after everything that's shiny and new, to go after the latest TikTok trend or Instagram thing. And so you want to stop and grab all these shiny objects that don't actually matter in the end game. And they don't have a purpose, and they distract you and they pull you away from where God has you. And then ultimately you end up with a stomach ache. So while you're waiting, here's one of the promises that God gives us. He says, while you wait, be of good courage, and I will strengthen your heart. I will give you the power to say no to those temptations. I will guide you and lead you, and trust my timing. Be patient, because the worth is in the wait, and the wait is worth it. So don't worry so much about satisfying your sweet tooth per se while you're waiting on God. Instead, consider how great it will be when you've filled your soul after you've waited for his timing. And that's it for today's episode. So let's review one more time and recap so that we can understand God's timing, because I really want you to get this so that you have so much peace in your waiting time. The first thing we need to understand about God is that to everything, there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. He has already orchestrated it and given it a timeline. That means that if you're hurried and feeling antsy, you're out of the schedule. Get back in alignment with Him. Second thing we need to understand, what's yours is yours if you choose it. God will always be a gentleman and allow you to make the choice. But if you choose it, then make sure that you're choosing it because you want what God has for you and not what people want for you or anything else. And number 3, the wait is essential for the worth because that is where the worth is made. Psalms 27 verse 14, wait on the Lord, be of good courage, and He shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. Before we close out like we're at church. Before we end this podcast today, I want to tell you about something that I've created for you that is linked below in the show notes. It is called The Beginner's Guide to Overcoming Anxiety by Faith, and it walks you through 3 steps to start your journey of overcoming anxiety and getting to that place of peace. It is literally a guide that was completely written and customized just for you on how to partner with God to move from panic to peace. Wink, wink. I definitely did that on purpose. And then, of course, as always, join me back again next Thursday for another episode of Panic Meet Peace.